And the sa'ada of such a nafs and of such a qalb, as is well established in our deen, is through what? Attainment of ilm and ma'rifah that lead to hubbullah azza wa jal. Ilm, knowledge, and ma'rifah that lead to the mahabba of Allah azza wa jal. Because that is the origin of that nafs. And it wants always to go back to its original state. And it must be nourished from its own world. They say that this body and the nafs and the ruh, sometimes all of these words are used interchangeably, ruh and nafs and qalb and aql, but at other times they are used to mean different things, and that's not the subject matter of today's. They say this body is mounted by the nafs. In other words, the body, the physical body, the four-dimensional attribute of a human being, are like the horse, if you will, the mount that a rider uses. The rider and the horse. So the nafs or the ruh is the rider, and these physical attributes are the mount or the horse. So you use it to travel. And then when the horse gets hungry, what do you do? What do? You get off the horse and you let the horse graze, eating grass. Will you eat grass with the horse? Is that how you nourish yourself as a rider? Is that how we nourish ourselves? Everyone who does that will be called a fool in four-dimensional world, or crazy or mad. Yet this ruh and this nafs and this qalb of ours, we starve them in a world that is strange to them, because this is an earthly world, and we force upon them earthly ways and earthly nourishments. Like a rider getting off his horse and go and eat grass and dung with his horse or with his camel. Allah Azza wa Jal make that nafs, the malaika nafs, to be also nourished. And in our lives, a balance is to be struck between all of these. And the person whose cattle-like nafs is more developed and cultivated will live like that. And his or her happiness is pursued in cattle-like pursuits. And the person whose nafs is predatory will attain his or her happiness. You find Muslims and non-Muslims feeling satisfied and fulfilled by being predatory. Economically and socially and politically and military and so on and so forth. At the family level, at the community level, at the individual level, and so on. And you find the person whose shaitani nafs is developed and cultivated acts as a shaitan. Wal-'iyadhu billah, in deceiving, in deception, in conspiracy, in lying, in backbiting, in evilness. Because that nafs, my dear brother and sister, has perhaps, or the most highly developed side of it is the shaitani side. And you find someone whose nafs is a combination of all of those, but one of them is most preeminent and most dominant. And some, walillahi alhamd, their malaiki nafs is most developed and most cultivated, and therefore they have balanced the cattle-like and the predatory-like nafs in order to use it indeed as a mount for the rawhani nafs, and to continue to develop those attributes that will enable it to attain that greater state of happiness in this dunya and most importantly, in akhirah. And therefore Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam في قوله إنما بعثت لأتمم مكارم الأخلاق, when he said sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, again what means I was surely sent for the purpose to fulfill the most excellent ways of akhlaq. And we explained that akhlaq is the plural of khuluq, and the khuluq is the state, the inner state of the nafs, with the details that we mentioned yesterday and some today. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam came to help us, to show us how to raise that nafs to the balanced form. How to realize within us those lower states of the nafs. And how to realize in us the exalted state of the nafs, and how to develop and cultivate the exalted malaik state of the nafs, so that our qalb, now used in a different meaning, so that our qalb, the side of it on the nafs, takes that which is predominant, namely the malaiki attributes, and some of it towards its own world of the ruh, and takes only that which is heavenly and beautiful, and therefore the qalb only receives that which is constructive, that which will help it attain tuma'nina. And the purpose of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is so that you and I, in other words, the purpose very simplified. I told you yesterday, my dear brothers and sisters, that the equation of life is very simple. And that simplified mission of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is so that you and I will end up where? In Jannah and not in Nar. And in Jannah there are levels of happiness. Equation is very simple. The rest are details. And the rest are interpretations and consequences and so on. And that's why some ulama would say that the purpose or the objectives of this deen are number one, tawheed, number two, tazkiyah, and the third are consequences. Such as those who call it al-imran, that is to form a civilization, an Islamic civilization. Islamic civilization is a consequence of tawheed, which breeds or generates akhlaq. And when there is tawheed, remember that's the purpose for which we are created, تحقيق العبودية لله عز وجل. Then it leads to tazkiyah as a means and as a fruit. And then that will generate a civilization, a imran, a hadara. But to speak only of the good things externally, of da'wah, of political activity, of social activity, of all types of beneficial activities, to speak about them and to practice them without this concept of akhlaq, then it is like an empty shell that has nothing inside. It looks attractive, it might look solid, but if you press it, it will implode on itself. Without the core, all of these activities of a human being, without the proper state of the nafs, are like that empty shell. That is why Allah Azza wa Jal on the day of judgment, for example, does not accept the good deeds of a mushrik. Because they are externally good, but they do not emanate from a nafs that is properly polished. And that is why Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ بِقِيعَةٍ يَحْسَبُهُ الظَّمْآنُ مَاءً حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءَهُ لَمْ يَجِدْهُ شَيْئًا وَوَجَدَ اللَّهَ عِنْدَهُ فَوَفَّاهُ حِسَابَهُ وكذلك يقول الله عز وجل والذين كفروا أعمالهم كرماد اشتدت به الريح في يوم عاصف لا يقدرون على شيء مما كسبوا, says Allah Azza wa Jal. What means, and those who have rejected Iman, who have rejected Allah Azza wa Jal and rejected Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, their deeds, their actions are like a mirage. We know what a mirage is, right? Every time we got closer to that place where we thought we saw a pond of water, when we arrive at that point, there is nothing. This is the parable Allah sets in the Quran for those whose external activities may be attractive, but whose anfus are empty, especially if they are filled with kufr and nifaq and riya and so on. Then they shall come on the day of judgment and they are assuming they're going to find their accounts full. And there is nothing. And Allah Azza wa Jal gives another example pertaining to the same category of people, that their actions are like dust or ashes in the strong winds. Take ashes and hold your hands in the strong winds. What will there be? Nothing. Haba'an manthura. Yes, my dear brothers and sisters, we live in a world that is very challenging at the external image level, remember? Even good actions and Samaritan actions and humanitarian actions have become very attractive, but they are very empty inside. And we are drawn to that. We are drawn to that until they become, or that mode of life, or that style of humanitarian life even, becomes a philosophical model of ours. Out of our weakness, out of the nafs itself that is weak, that is yet to realize what it is. And in which state it is, and which side is yet to be developed, and how to produce that balance. In addition to that, and I'm going to be inshallah as brief, and these are hopefully inshallah Azza wa Jal, if you will, introductory statements that help us perhaps, that help, if you will, provide in us and stimulate in us an interest to learn more and to study more and to find out more and to pursue a patient, long course in this journey of ubudiyah back home to Jannah, inshaAllah ta'ala.